afternoon.
Somebody help!
People thinking, is this happening?
It just went from nothing to one of the biggest things you can be involved in. Taking somebody's life.
The Victim's Own Body, a book of secrets.
He can't talk, but he's trying to paint something on his arm.
I think he was trying to indicate who shot him.
This is the magic moment.
The moment that will make or break this case.
Oh, well now. Emotion. It begins at a high level, then adds some more to it, adds some more disputes, adds some more reasons. It doesn't take long to reach a boiling point.
It's Monday afternoon, and folks across Colorado Springs are going about their daily routine.
Mark Ruffle stops for gas. He's filling up his tank, getting ready to pull away, and all of a sudden, he hears what he thinks might be a backfire, a loud bang, then consecutively.
Oh my gosh.
Mark's instinct right away told him that somebody needs help.
Oh my gosh. Someone call 911. Hurry!
Mark yells for the people that were peering out of the auto parts store to call the police.
The victim's covered in blood. He's gasping for air. Doesn't look good that he's going to make it.
Across town, Lieutenant Joe Kenda is waiting in line at the drive-through bank teller.
I'll need to see the deposit slip again.
When your day is as busy as mine is, it's very difficult to do simple things. I take a moment to make a deposit, to cover a check my wife has already written to somebody.
Come on.
And as always the case in drive-ups at a bank, the guy in front of you is passing 14 documents back and forth with the tube. You're always behind that guy.
Dispatch to Kenda.
Go for Kenda.
We've got a shooting at 845 South Circle Drive.
10-4, I'm on the way.
Can I just cover my wife's check? Well, I guess not.
A few minutes later, Kenda arrives at an unusual location for a crime scene.
It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon in a busy part of town. There are gas stations, restaurants, and this auto parts place. It's not a bar. It's not a strip club. That is all extremely odd.
How you doing?
Good, sir. How are you?
You the first one on the scene?
Yes, sir.
So what we got?
Got a black male victim, 18 to 22, multiple gunshot wounds to the chest. He's en route to the hospital now.
Do you have a name?
No, sir. No name, no wallet or ID. He's a John Doe for now.
Let's take a look.
Yes, sir.
The evidence in the scene is approximately 12 feet from the front door of the auto parts store.
The victim's body was right here. His feet were down there and his head up here.
My God, that's a lot of blood.
Yes, sir.
There's a pool of blood and some shell casings, which appear to be .22 caliber.
We also found 8 shell casings close to the body.
Casings eject from semi-automatic pistols, but they don't fly a city block. So the shooter is standing in front of this guy. This is a direct confrontation.
With the amount of shell casings in the area, this is not a robbery or a random situation.
This individual, according to the officer on the scene, had $15 in cash in his hand and a receipt and also a small cardboard box.
That was in the victim's hands.
It's a thermostat for an engine.
Well, here's our guy. He's there to buy a part for his car. When he comes out of that place, he makes contact with somebody, and that somebody opens fire. Not just a little bit, but a lot. Now consider that our shooter is standing in the middle of this parking lot at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in front of God and everybody. He doesn't care. He's enraged. That says he knows this person well.
But who is the victim? The receipt offers no clues, but the thermostat gives Kenda an idea.
You know, these thermostats, they don't put these in modern cars. This guy's got to be driving something in the 70s or maybe earlier. It's an American car.
I have been married for 49 years. We have owned 57 cars. I know a lot about them. My wife on occasion would get very annoyed with me in my cars because I love cars. My response was always the same. Hey, it could be women and whiskey. It's cars. This car that belongs, we think, to our victim is a classic car.
It doesn't take Kenda long to spot a vehicle that fits the bill.
There it is. Dodge Charger.
Everything about the car was as it was when it was built, and that makes it valuable, but it also means the owner is very concerned about it and makes certain to maintain everything.
You know, it's got to be our victim's car. Want to run the plate, see who the owner is?
Yes.
85 Charlie, 29 check, Colorado, Sierra, Bravo, India, 0614.
But when the plates are run, the owner's identity only deepens the mystery.
Car comes back to a Joe Jefferson.
Belongs to Joseph Jefferson. So that's our man? Well, no, because we've determined that Joseph Jefferson's 49 years old. And this is a kid.
That's not our victim.
Why was the victim holding a car part intended for a car that didn't belong to him?
Lieutenant, may I have a witness right over here?
Oh, thanks.
So while I'm trying to consider what possibly may have happened, one of the officers walks up to me and says, "Hey, I got a witness. Let me introduce you to this guy."
How you doing? I'm Lieutenant Kenda.
Mark Raffle. It's been a pretty intense afternoon.
Want to walk me through it?
Yeah, I mean, I was just across the street getting gas, and I heard shots, and I saw this guy fall over.
Hey, buddy, you okay?
He says he looks at this guy. He's got blood all over his shirt.
It's all right, man, okay?
He is gasping for air,
Who did this to you, do you know?
and the guy makes no reply. He tries to reply, but he's coughing and choking, and blood's coming out of his mouth. And then Mark says he did the strangest thing. He says he notices the victim painting on his arm.
That was his last action, and I think he was trying to indicate we shot him.
Of all the dead people and all the murders I have ever been involved in, I've never seen or heard of that.
Did you see what he wrote?
It was hard to tell. Maybe a J and an O. Then the ambulance came, and I couldn't see what else.
I appreciate it. You want to call the hospital, have them preserve that writing until I can go read it myself?
Yes, sir.
Was it the letter J? Was it the number 5? Was it, something else?
Whether it's J.O. or something else entirely, at this point doesn't matter to me. What matters is it's there, and it has to be protected.
Arriving at Memorial Hospital, Kenda and his team check in on their victim and get some bad news.
Do you have the cause of death?
Yeah, he received one round right to the center of his chest.
The victim has died as a result of his gunshot wounds. One of those bullets went through his heart.
Were you able to preserve the blood evidence?
For the most part, we covered it up as soon as you guys alerted us.
To preserve that writing on his arm, they would bag it, and they had it draped in such a way that it wouldn't really touch any part of the arm.
If we discover a name on his forearm, it would be similar to a dying declaration.
Ready?
You bet.
What could be better than this? The victim wrote the name of the shooter on his arm.
Here we go.
Except he didn't.
All we observed was blood smears.
Did you see anything?
I looked at it and couldn't see anything that made sense.
Kenda's most promising clue goes up in smoke. And hours into his investigation, he's still no closer to even knowing who his victim is.
Yeah, I don't see it.
So you go from elation and thinking that this is finally going to be an easy one, and reality sets in immediately, explaining, no, it's going to be awful. We're investigating the death of an unknown individual.
Oh my gosh.
Killed in an auto parts parking lot.
Can you tell me something?
The witnesses say he wrote a name on his arm, but it's nothing more than marks in blood.
All right, thanks, Doc.
Yeah, good luck, man.
With his sole lead now a dead end, Kenda shifts his focus to identifying the deceased.
Without the identification of the victim, the investigation is at a standstill.
Lieutenant Kenda to Duffy.
Yeah, go for Duffy.
I need to know if there's anyone at the scene that has any more information on our victim.
Has anyone seen him before? Does anyone know his name?
According to detectives, none of the bystanders know the victim's name, but they have uncovered another eyewitness.
We got a customer that saw somebody running away from the scene.
Witness said he ran up to a white sedan, jumped into the passenger seat. The car drove away.
That, to me, is very significant. Our shooter has a driver waiting for him. It's more than a chance encounter. This is a plan.
Thanks for the info. Kenda out.
Excuse me. Yes. My name is Everett McKenzie, and I heard about the shooting down there at the auto parts store.
Mr. McKenzie explains that his son Antoine spends a lot of time at the auto parts store, and that he hasn't heard from him all day long, which is unusual.
We do have a male victim with gunshot wounds, and he is deceased.
Kenda is beginning to believe that his victim is Edward McKenzie's son, Antoine. Unfortunately, there's only one way to find out.
Sir, I'd like you to come in and take a look and see if you know who it is.
Okay.
You ready?
That's him. That's my son.
And we now know who our victim is. He is Antoine McKenzie. Identification made the hard way. Not only has his father's greatest fear been realized, he is feet away from the deceased body of his son.
No. No, this is not happening. When I find a son of a bitch, I'ma kill him myself.
He storms off. He leaves the hospital because he's mad.
So now that Antoine's father has stormed out of the room, he leaves us with the task of telling Antoine's grandmother that he's dead. It's a very unpleasant task, but one that's necessary. So we do.
Man, I'm sorry to say it is your grandson.
Oh, no. We give her a few minutes to settle, but we explain we have to ask her some questions.
Ma'am, can I ask you to tell me about your grandson?
Antoine was a sweetheart. He always helped me out at my house.
His grandmother described him as a very nice young man who wasn't into gangs, wasn't into trouble, didn't hang around with the wrong people. Just a loving, young 20-year-old man.
And when was the last time you saw him?
This morning, he left early to work on his car. He loved that car.
Antoine wanted it to be in tip-top shape because he was going to drive to Texas to visit his mother.
It's a vintage car that had been restored. He took a lot of pride in his car.
How long had you owned the car?
He's been saving up for it for ages. And he finally was able to give the owner the final payment this month.
It's now clear to Kenda why the plates on Antoine's car came back to 49-year-old Joseph Jefferson.
In fact, he bought it so recently he hadn't even changed the registration yet over to his name.
Do you have any idea who might want to harm your grandson?
Antoine was a good boy. He stays out of trouble. This must be some mistake. Nobody ever wanted to hurt him.
As I'm talking with grandmother, Mr. McKenzie returns. And he's still very emotional, but he's obviously not angry anymore.
Sorry about that. I just lost it.
It's understandable.
I think I know who killed my son.
He tells police that Antoine has had bad blood with someone named Kelvin Washington. He's not really sure why, but he knows that it's been going on.
It was something that happened a couple of years back when they was in high school.
All right, let's go talk to Kelvin.
Can I help you?
Yes, sir. I'm Lieutenant Kenda from the Colorado Springs Police Department, and this is Detective Walker. We're here to talk to a Kelvin Washington about an incident that happened earlier today. Does he happen to live here?
Yes, he's my stepson. Come on in.
Thank you.
Kelvin, there's some detectives here to talk to you.
Kelvin does not present as a violent criminal. Kelvin's a 19-year-old kid wearing glasses watching television. Does that mean he's not capable of pulling a trigger? No, it doesn't. Does his appearance raise any alarm? No, it doesn't.
But what Kelvin says next immediately gets Kenda's attention.
I know you'll be coming to see me.
Well, no. Does he know that because he put 6 bullets in Antoine at an auto parts store? That's what we're here to find out. This investigation is starting to progress.
Oh my God.
We've gone from Antoine McKenzie being killed in the auto parts lot, and we've determined that he has this enemy, Kelvin Washington, a kid of almost the same age.
Kelvin.
When we contact Kelvin, he tells us that he automatically assumed that we were coming to talk to him about the death of Antoine McKenzie.
Why would you say that, Kelvin? Is there a reason why you're expecting the police to come visit you?
Kelvin was not surprised when police showed up because he knew that fingers would probably be pointed at him.
News travels fast in this neighborhood. I know Antoine got killed today. He and I, we didn't get along so good. Everybody knows that.
You could just come in and talk to us.
That's what I told my stepdad. But he told me to wait to see if you come looking for me.
And here I am. Why don't you tell me about your relationship with Antoine?
I ain't kill him. I could tell you that.
Kenda wonders if Kelvin's laid-back demeanor is just a front.
He's in his own living room. I am the stranger. He is not. He's in the best position to lie to me and be comfortable doing it.
But there's a surefire way to flip the dynamic.
Why don't we take a ride down to my office and talk about it?
Okay. I guess I can meet you there.
This won't take long. We take my car. I'll have someone drop you off when we're done.
Okay.
So we drive down to police headquarters. And now we're going to be in my living room and not in yours.
So you're about to start telling me about how you and Antoine got along?
Here's the thing. It all started in high school with this girl named Cynthia. Me and Cynthia, we was dating at the time. So, I made the basketball team this year.
Finally.
Whatever, but I'm supposed to be getting a lot of playing time, so you gotta be at all the games.
Okay, well, I'll try.
All right, that's cool. Maybe I'll be right back.
Okay.
According to Kelvin, he wasn't the only one with a crush on Cynthia.
What's up, baby? How you doing?
Hey, Antoine.
What?
Look,
Come on,
you
I
better
like
stop.
What do you see in that square anyway?
Look, I like him.
Come on now, you're gonna do way better than that. Come on, I like that.
Dog, what's your problem?
Problem?
Yeah, it's a problem.
Oh.
You need to get out of here.
Nice. What you gonna do about it?
Boy, you better get out my face.
What's gonna happen? What you gonna do?
A lot's gonna happen.
I'll see you later.
What you doing here?
Kelvin told investigators that Antoine actually came to his house and started a fight with him over the girlfriend situation.
You better not ever disrespect me like that ever again in your life.
You better leave my girl alone.
What's gonna happen?
You're gonna get hurt. Boy, get off my porch.
You better watch your back.
When he said to me that this started over a girl, my interest was immediately piqued. The sex drive is a very powerful emotion, more than enough to cause somebody to pull a gun.
So you hate Antoine?
Nah, I wouldn't say that. I just don't like the guy.
But he tried to steal your girl.
Cynthia? I'm not even worried about her. We broke up years ago.
Kelvin says that was, water under the bridge, and that he'd gotten over it and moved on.
Look, I'm a grown man. I got a job, I got a family. I really don't have time to deal with none of that nonsense.
So I said, if you say you're not responsible for the death of Antoine McKenzie, then where were you today at around 3 o'clock when somebody took Antoine McKenzie's life?
And he basically said he was at home most of the day, had left for a very short time.
I stepped out for a little while, but I was back at home by 3 o'clock.
Kelvin, what type of vehicle do you have?
It's just a little four-door sedan.
What color is it?
Silver.
Well, we have a witness that says the car involved in the shooting is a white car. He's a relatively calm kid. His parents are cooperative. There's really nothing there that is a red flag to me, not yet at least.
All right, you're free to go. I'll have an officer drive you home.
At this point in this investigation, I'm feeling the usual lost soul effect. We've taken 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
But a startling discovery is about to take the investigation in a new direction.
Just got off the phone with the coroner. You're not gonna believe this.
Try me.
They go into the Vic's clothes. They find a tube of crazy glue. And there's something else.
Well, it's not illegal to possess crazy glue. But when they open the crazy glue, what it contains isn't glue.
We find 4.7 grams of crack cocaine, which would indicate that it was a distribution rather than recreational use.
Though it's a critical piece of evidence, the vial of crack cocaine only raises more questions.
That opens this enormous double doors leading to the drug world, where motives abound and little connection is required to result in gunfire.
Seems that our Vic may not be so innocent after all.
Gather the other detectives. I want all of you to get with your street informants. Find out if Antoine had any disputes with anyone in the drug world.
On it.
There are jungle drums in the drug world. Start listening to the jungle drums. If you're going to kill over drugs, you're proud of it. You want everybody to know. Don't mess with me, or what happened to Antoine is going to happen to you.
With officers combing the streets for intel, it doesn't take long for a tip to roll in.
This is Kenda.
Hi, Joe. This is Agent Thompson with the FBI.
I get a call from an FBI agent in the local field office who has an informant who says he knows who killed Antoine McKenzie. Oh, my. We're on the hunt for the killer of Antoine McKenzie. An FBI agent has come forward with a confidential informant who says he has critical information about the McKenzie case.
So what do you got for me?
Well, our CI says he was set up. Someone wanted him taken out.
According to the CI, a man named Harold Smith could be involved in Antoine's murder.
Is this now a drug killing? Well, it certainly could be. You could reasonably make an assumption, but it remains an assumption because you don't know. The informant also says that just before the shots were fired, Antoine's car was seen at his house. What if Harold is the dealer and Antoine isn't paying him? Could this be reasonable? Absolutely. In the narcotics world, the smallest thing can lead to a fatal result.
Kenda runs a records check on Harold Smith, and within the hour, he and his team are on their way to Smith's West Side residence.
We find out where Harold lives. Small home in a lower income area.
Can I help you? Lieutenant Kenda, this is Detective Walker. Do you know Antoine McKenzie?
Yeah, I knew Antoine. Knew him well. You boys investigating what happened?
We are.
Kenda knows criminals, but so far, Harold isn't acting like one.
He's not shocked, and he's not angry. He's inquisitive. He doesn't have the demeanor of someone that knows why we're there.
Are all these cars yours?
No, I'm a mechanic. Got a little business specializing in older cars. That's how I knew Antoine.
Yeah, I kind of just got the car and it's overheating, so.
Let me check. Let me check in here. Step back so you don't get popped with the water.
He said he's been over here 100 times every car he's owned, and I've always helped him with the cars.
Got enough water, so let's check some more.
He's interested in it. He wants to learn, and I helped the kid.
Did you happen to see him today?
Yeah, I saw him earlier.
What was he doing here?
He brought over his charger. Said he was overheating, so I took a look at it. It was the thermostat. It ended up being stuck.
So he said, I told him to go down to Circle Drive and get a thermostat and come back and I'd put it in for him. But he never came back.
The fact that Antoine was in possession of a new thermostat hasn't been released to the public. It suggests to Kenda that Harold is telling the truth.
So was the informant correct? Sort of?
Just going down to the auto parts store. Tell him you need a thermostat for a charger.
Okay.
Was Harold involved in this crime? No. He has no police record. He has nothing. He's just a guy who happens to know Antoine.
Well, I appreciate your help. Have a good day.
Thank you.
At this point in this investigation, we're back again to the usual. Everything that looks so good turns out to be so bad. This case is getting harder by the minute.
Unbeknownst to Kenda, his luck is about to change.
Another informant came forward with some information, told us that there was an individual who had a feud with the victim in this case.
So you're saying you know who shot Antoine McKenzie?
Yeah, the boy you're looking for goes by Nebo.
Nebo? Come on, ain't your real name.
Nebo's his name, that's what I got. That's the guy that killed Antoine.
The informant reports Nebo and Antoine have been in heated arguments for an extended period of time. On one occasion, Nebo shoots at Antoine outside of Antoine's house.
Bro, what you doing in front of my house?
I got hit.
Nebo hits his cousin, who's standing next to him.
Antoine grabs his piece.
Hey, Nebo!
Shoots at Nebo and misses.
At this moment, we've exposed that there's another side to Antoine's personality. Maybe he does some other things that aren't the nicest things.
So why were these two angry at each other in the first place?
I don't know why they hated each other, but they did. Eventually, somebody was going to get murdered.
According to the informant, the prior afternoon, Nebo decided it was time to take Antoine out once and for all. So Nebo and a friend drove around looking for Antoine, and when they found him, Nebo shot him dead.
And do you know this friend's name?
Yeah, real young high school dude. Charlie something. Charlie Adams is his name.
Would you happen to know what color Charlie's car is?
It's white.
This is the magic moment. What did our witness say? Our shooter gets in the passenger side of a white car and it drives away. Charlie Adams has a white car. Now we can talk to an active participant. Who is Charlie Adams?
Kenda and his team track down Charlie Adams' address and pay him a visit.
You see that? Looks like we're in the right place.
Yes?
Is there Charlie Adams that lives here?
He does. He's my son. How can I help you?
I would like to ask him a few questions if we may.
Come on in. Charles, could you come here, please? Have a seat.
Charlie, I'm going to be honest with you. We've got information that you were driving the getaway car for a person that committed a murder.
Wait, what? You tell these gentlemen what they need to know, and you do it right now.
The mother is angry with her son, concerned about his involvement criminally in something as awful as a murder. She has all those emotions going on, but her sense of rightness overcomes that. He's almost in tears because he's a kid, and he believes that he could be in the trouble of his life.
Will Charlie be able to tell us who Nebo is and what his involvement in this homicide was?
Tell me what happened, Charlie.
Tell them.
Me and Kelvin were riding around.
Wait. You and who?
Kelvin Washington. Everybody called him Nebo.
Now I know that Kelvin Washington is in fact Nebo, and I'm thinking, you lying little bastard. You didn't tell me the truth for a second. Well, let me tell you something, Kelvin. We're going to have another conversation, and you are not going to like the next one. We are now at the moment of breaking this case open like an egg. We know who the driver was.
It's all right, okay? Hold on.
We know that Nebo and Kelvin Washington are one and the same person.
But knowing all this isn't enough to warrant the arrest of Kelvin Washington. Kenda and his team need Charlie Adams to fill in the rest of the story.
So why were you and Calvin driving around?
Charles.
I was trying to find some weed.
I know a guy that he work around there.
He work here?
Yeah, he work here.
According to Charlie, their effort to score some marijuana led them to a parking lot near an auto parts store. That's where something caught Kelvin's eye.
Yo, pull up right here. Pull up right. Yeah, right here. Go ahead.
Charlie explains that after Kelvin got out of the car, he parked around the corner. A few minutes later, he heard what sounded like gunfire.
Did Calvin tell you what he was doing when he was gone from the car?
No.
Did you ever see a gun?
No. I ain't know what he did. I ain't see no gun.
Charlie Adams doesn't admit that he knew that Kelvin was going to go shoot Antoine, and he doesn't admit that Kelvin came back and told him that he shot Antoine. But what it does tell investigators that Charlie Adams put Kelvin at the scene of that homicide.
Mom, you gotta believe me. I didn't know he was gonna commit a crime.
I believed him. I looked at him and his mother and I said, Charlie, have you ever heard the expression, truth will set you free? Well, in your case, it just did.
With Charlie's confession in tow, Kenda summons Kelvin Washington, aka Nebo, back down to the station.
He's still very calm, cool, and collected, smiling. Thinks there's nothing to this. Thinks we don't know anything.
So what's up, Nebo? We've been talking to a lot of people. Got a lot of different stories. But guess what? You're the center of all of them. But I'm a reasonable guy. I understand there's another side to every story. This is your chance to tell me yours.
I think now he is aware that we're standing on his tail. So he begins by saying, well, there is more to the feud than what I told you the first time. Well, no, Nebo.
Antoine had it out for me ever since high school. He just wouldn't leave me alone. I could have moved out of town, but my parents really needed me here.
So what happened?
He was just always after me. He was constantly threatening me. The guy was just out of control.
Despite the crack cocaine found on Antoine's body, it's clear to Kenda this shooting isn't drug-related, just a feud over a girl that spun out of control.
And you didn't do anything to keep this going?
No. I'm telling you, I did nothing.
You played no part in it at all?
I mean, yeah, I used to talk to him. That's because he always used to be bullying me. And I was just trying to defend myself.
Open this door, punk! Don't make me break this door down!
Yeah, what you gotta say now? Yeah, you better run, little punk ass. Come around here again, I dare you! I dare you!
Oh, Kelvin, that's brilliant. You're not only admitting your involvement with a further feud, you've put a gun in your own hands. I'm liking this. I'm liking this a lot.
Okay, I get it. Antoine's the monster and you're innocent. And you expect me to believe you had nothing to do with this at all?
Look, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay? I didn't shoot him. I didn't kill anyone.
Crying and lying. Crying and denying. Are we going to get any further with him? No. But we've gotten far enough. He has said enough to put a rope around his own neck.
It's your last chance, Kelvin. We know you did it. Come clean, get it off your chest.
Kelvin refused to admit to me that he was responsible for this. He just wouldn't do it.
I want a lawyer.
Sounds to me like you're gonna need one.
Though Kelvin Washington never admits his guilt, Kenda believes he can piece together the events leading up to the murder of Antoine McKenzie.
I believe Charlie Adams is telling the truth.
It's gonna take long?
No, it's gonna be quick. It's gonna be real quick.
That they were cruising around looking for scores of marijuana. But Kelvin sees the car.
One word.
He sees Antoine's car.
Yo, stop right here. Stop right.
And it's the only car like that in that whole part of town. The passion rises in him.
Hey, pull around the corner. I'm gonna be right back, bro. Yeah, pull around there. I'm gonna come right
The
back.
hate rises in him. He's got a gun in his pants. It's time to end it.
At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, broad daylight, he was gonna do what he had to do.
Antoine comes out of that store. Kelvin walks up to him and starts blasting. I doubt he said a word to him. He's not there to talk. He's there to kill. Antoine, in his last moments on Earth, tries to tell us who did this. He tries to write on his arm in his own blood the name of the shooter. What if instead of J.O., it's an attempt to write a K? Kelvin.
Kelvin Washington is convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole.
People should consider these tales they're hearing on this program. Compare them to the life they engage in. Think about what could go wrong. Think about how far something could be taken. Maybe it'll stop you from engaging in that behavior. Maybe. If it doesn't, you'll wind up talking to someone just like me. And you won't like it.
It began on a night when the wind howled through the empty streets of Amarillo, Texas, carrying whispers that no one could understand. The town had gone to sleep thinking it was just another ordinary evening, but by midnight, the quiet was shattered. A single scream pierced the darkness, echoing down alleyways and empty lots, bouncing off brick walls, unanswered, untraceable. By dawn, a body had been found, sprawled across the cracked pavement behind a shuttered convenience store, her eyes wide open, staring at a sky she would never see again. She was 17. Everyone knew her. She was the kind of girl whose laugh floated above the crowd, whose presence made corners of the town brighter. And now, she was gone, replaced by a silence so thick it pressed against the ribs of every neighbor, every passerby who had glimpsed her in the days before, unaware that this night would change everything. The scene was horrific. Police cordoned off the street, yellow tape fluttering like a grim flag. The smell of gasoline mixed with something metallic, something darker, something that clung to the air. Officers took notes, photographs, careful not to disturb the evidence that might hold the secret of who had done this. Witnesses were interviewed. Friends, classmates, shopkeepers. No one remembered seeing anything. No one could account for the hours between sunset and the discovery. The town held its breath. Parents held their children tighter. Teenagers glanced over their shoulders with a new wariness. A shadow had fallen, one that would linger for decades. Detectives combed the streets, dusted for prints, collected fibers, analyzed the scene with a precision born from decades of experience. They followed every lead, no matter how small. A man seen near the store hours before was questioned. A truck with muddy tires was checked for fingerprints. Hours turned into days. Days into weeks. And yet the killer remained invisible, untouchable. A cold case was born that night. The files grew thick with unanswered questions. Why her? Why then? What had she seen? What had led someone to strike so brutally and vanish without a trace? The town moved on, or pretended to. The convenience store reopened, paint scrubbed clean, lights flickering back to life. Life had to continue, even under the shadow of horror. Families went about their routines, teenagers drove past the spot without speaking, everyone carrying the memory in hushed tones, in the clenching of fists, in the refusal to look too closely at the darkness that had passed through their streets. And then, years later, the case resurfaced. Cold cases are like ghosts. They linger, waiting for someone to notice, waiting for a slip in time, a mistake, a moment when the past refuses to stay buried. In 2020, forensic technology had evolved. DNA that had once yielded nothing was re-examined, reprocessed. Swabs, fibers, items preserved meticulously in evidence bags, long forgotten, were now analyzed with a precision that the original investigators could only dream of. And there it was, a match, one that pointed to a man who had lived openly in the community for years, whose face had passed unnoticed in the crowd. Shock rippled through Amarillo like electricity through a wire. Friends, neighbors, even family members of the victim could not comprehend that the shadow walking among them had been the one who had taken her. The detectives moved cautiously, knowing that after 25 years, memories fade, alibis become fragile, but justice must find its way through the cracks. Witnesses were called, interrogations scheduled. The suspect, once cornered by incontrovertible evidence, began to unravel. What followed was a confession, slow, reluctant, chilling in its clarity. Details emerged, details no one had known, details that matched the evidence with a precision that stunned even the seasoned investigators. He spoke of that night, of being drawn into a darkness he could not resist, of mistakes and impulses that had led to a life-changing, life-ending act. The town listened, watched, and for some, it was relief, for others, it was horror renewed. To know the killer had walked among them, unrecognized, was a truth more haunting than the uncertainty that had gripped them for a quarter-century. Families of the victim found fragments of closure, but closure is never whole. Grief returns, reshaped, colored by years of unanswered questions. Friends of the girl remembered her smile, her laughter, the vibrancy of life abruptly extinguished. And the community, still scarred, still wary, still holding on to the remnants of fear and vigilance, realized that time does not erase evil, it only delays its reckoning. As the trial approached, the streets seemed to tense again. Conversations in stores hushed, eyes darted to unfamiliar faces, and in the quiet of homes, people remembered that scream, the wind through the empty streets, the body behind the convenience store. A cold case reopened, a confession that shocked, a town forever changed. And through it all, the memory of a 17-year-old girl remained vivid, haunting every corner, reminding everyone that darkness can hide in plain sight, and that justice, even decades later, has the power to shatter the silence that evil once exploited. Detectives revisited every detail, every footprint, every shadow captured in photographs long ago. The old files, yellowed and worn, were spread across tables, walls covered with strings connecting names, dates, and places, a chaotic web that suddenly made sense under the light of new evidence. The suspect's life was dissected. Friends described him as quiet, almost invisible, someone who blended into the background, yet the confession revealed a mind calculating, patient, and disturbingly aware. He had watched, waited, and moved in a rhythm that had escaped notice for decades. The town grappled with disbelief. How could someone so ordinary harbor such darkness? Shopkeepers remembered fleeting moments. A man loitering near the store, a shadow in the corner of a classroom, a glance that felt off but was dismissed as imagination. Witnesses were called again, their memories jogged by photographs, timelines, subtle cues, and slowly, fragments fell into place. A neighbor recalled hearing an argument late at night, voices raised and broken by tension, though at the time it was dismissed as trivial domestic squabble. A clerk remembered a customer buying gasoline in an unusual quantity the day before the body was discovered, something insignificant then, now painfully relevant. Each memory carried weight, each recollection a key that unlocked a door long sealed. As forensic teams combed through archives, DNA traces from objects once ignored began to speak volumes. Fibers matching the suspect's clothing, traces of hair, minute particles invisible to the naked eye were woven into the narrative of that night. The confession was pieced together with these findings, each word corroborated, every admission lined up with physical evidence. But the case remained more than science. It was human psychology in motion. What drove a man to act so violently, to erase life with a cold precision? Experts were brought in, profiling, analyzing, offering insights into impulses, control, and pathology. Every word from the suspect carried a weight that sent shivers through the room. He spoke of fear, of anger, of an uncontrollable urge, but also of meticulous planning, a chilling combination that blurred lines between impulse and intention. The community absorbed every revelation. Parents, grandparents, former classmates all re-examined the familiar streets, the convenience store, the alleys, the empty lots, looking at the spaces once considered safe. Children, now adults, recalled their own stories of that night, shadows glimpsed out of the corner of an eye, noises dismissed as imagination. The media descended, capturing each twist, each new discovery, each element of confession with headlines screaming across screens and newspapers. "Cold case shock. Killer walked among us," blared one, while another read, "Texas mystery reopened. Confession sends shivers through town." Yet, amid the chaos, the human toll was visible. Families who had mourned silently for decades confronted the visceral reality of knowing the truth. Therapy sessions were scheduled, support groups formed, and yet no measure could fully erase the trauma of waiting 25 years for answers. Police continued their meticulous work, cross-referencing alibis, tracing every movement the suspect claimed, verifying timelines, corroborating stories with neighbors, former classmates, and acquaintances. Gaps in memory were filled with forensic science. Time, once the enemy of the investigation, had become an ally. Surveillance cameras from decades ago were non-existent, but old photographs, receipts, and other mundane records now served as pieces of a jigsaw puzzle finally taking shape. The trial loomed, and as attorneys prepared, every citizen felt the weight of anticipation. Courtrooms were small, tight spaces filled with tension, every chair occupied by someone connected by circumstance or memory to that night long ago. The accused sat, expression unreadable, hands resting lightly, eyes flickering with a mix of defiance and resignation. The first day began with testimony that sent murmurs through the gallery. Forensic analysts presented evidence with painstaking detail, DNA sequences projected on screens, fibers magnified, the pattern undeniable. Witnesses recalled conversations, footsteps, gestures, all weaving into a timeline that left no room for doubt. Yet, as the trial progressed, the human dimension became undeniable. Friends of the victim described her laughter, her dreams, the way she had touched their lives, and the courtroom seemed to shrink under the weight of memory and grief. Experts testified on behavioral patterns, psychiatric assessments, detailing the suspect's potential motives, the psychological mechanisms behind delayed confession, and the chilling ease with which he had navigated life unnoticed. News crews reported live, capturing reactions outside the courthouse, townspeople whispering, faces reflecting a mix of relief, horror, and disbelief. Social media erupted, old classmates sharing memories, neighbors recounting subtle oddities, all the while amplifying the sense that the past had returned to demand reckoning. And yet, in the midst of revelation, the town felt an eerie emptiness. Streets once familiar now carried the imprint of tragedy. Every corner, every shadow, every whisper of wind seemed loaded with the memory of that night. The convenience store, once mundane, became a symbol, a grim reminder of fragility and mortality. People drove past slowly, reluctant to look directly, as if acknowledging the space allowed might awaken echoes of the past. The suspect's confession contained moments that were almost mundane, buying groceries, taking detours through side streets. Yet each detail painted a fuller picture of his presence among unsuspecting neighbors. It was a reminder that evil does not always announce itself. It sometimes lives quietly, patiently, waiting for moments to unfold. Families clung to fragments of closure. Mothers who had lain awake for decades imagining possibilities finally heard the narrative, horrifying in its specificity, yet providing answers that had eluded them for so long. Siblings, childhood friends, even strangers who had once glimpsed her in passing were drawn into the collective reckoning, a shared experience of relief intertwined with renewed grief. As the trial edged toward verdict, the town held its collective breath. The court's decision would not erase the years lost, nor fully repair the wounds inflicted by secrecy and violence, but it represented a confrontation with truth, a final act in a drama that had begun long before many of those present had even reached adulthood. The tension in the courthouse was palpable, a tangible energy that seemed to thrum in the air. Journalists scribbled frantically, cameras flashed, the weight of anticipation pressing against every wall. And then, the voice of justice, slow, deliberate, firm, would pronounce accountability, though the echoes of that night, the fear, the grief, the shock, would reverberate indefinitely. In the streets beyond the courthouse, whispers continued. Conversations, long dormant, sparked anew. Memories resurfaced, mingled with reflections on time, morality, and the fragility of trust. The story of a 17-year-old girl, her life cut short, and a man who had hidden in plain sight became an enduring cautionary tale. The cold case, reopened, had revealed not only a truth long concealed but also the resilience of a community that refused to be broken, that demanded answers, that bore the weight of grief with courage and dignity. And as the sun set over Amarillo, casting long shadows across familiar streets, one thing remained undeniable. The past had finally spoken, and those scars lingered. The silence that had haunted the town for 25 years was shattered, replaced by a haunting clarity, a shocking confession that would echo for generations. Even as the trial concluded, the town of Amarillo refused to exhale. Streets seemed quieter, yet heavier, as if the air itself carried the residue of decades-old terror. People moved carefully, memories replaying in slow motion, passing the convenience store, imagining the final moments, the wind brushing against brick and asphalt as if whispering secrets. Families who had once closed the chapter in private now found themselves revisiting sorrow, dissecting every detail, every missed signal, every instinct ignored. Psychologists appeared on local news segments, dissecting the mind of a killer who had blended seamlessly into the fabric of community life, someone ordinary in every outward measure, yet harboring chaos beneath. The confession, graphic and precise, replayed in countless minds. Details that had once been abstract nightmares now assumed form, shape, movement. Every day seemed to layer fresh tension over old wounds. Even routine trips to the grocery store or the pharmacy carried the weight of vigilance. Parents held their children closer. Teenagers glanced over shoulders. Strangers were met with silent scrutiny. The community was alert, awake in ways it had not needed to be for decades. Investigators stayed on, reviewing minutiae that might have been overlooked, tracing pathways, revisiting old witness statements, considering new angles. Each revelation deepened the sense of both relief and horror. The suspect, now convicted, had provided admissions that were meticulous, chillingly deliberate, yet sporadically fragmented, a mix of clarity and obfuscation. Experts worked tirelessly to reconcile gaps, to understand what motivated the delay, what allowed him to exist unnoticed for so long. The courtroom had delivered its verdict, but the narrative continued to unfold outside its walls. Friends of the victim, now adults, who had once been teenagers, spoke of their ongoing struggles, their attempts to reconcile youthful innocence with the raw knowledge of mortality and malice. Conversations flowed quietly in living rooms, over coffee tables, on park benches, threads of grief intertwined with reflections on trust, safety, and community. The convenience store, the epicenter of the original horror, remained a focal point. Some walked past quickly, avoiding the familiar facade, while others stopped, stared, absorbing every detail, as if the building itself could offer insight, some form of closure that human memory could not. Journalists returned repeatedly, crafting stories that captured the emotional landscape of a town still reconciling with shock. Headlines continued to scream. Cold case confession rocks Amarillo. 25 years later, answers emerge. Each article a reminder that justice had a delayed rhythm. Meanwhile, law enforcement departments engaged in internal review, scrutinizing procedures, decisions, and missed opportunities. The case had been cold for a quarter century, a stark reminder that even the most thorough investigations can leave gaps that time can conceal as easily as it reveals. Detectives interviewed acquaintances of the suspect again, uncovering subtle nuances of behavior that had previously seemed inconsequential. A smile too slow, a glance too calculating, patterns in movement unnoticed for decades. Each observation now carried the weight of significance, reframing memories into evidence of forethought and cunning. In the town, life slowly resumed its cadence, yet it was a cadence informed by vigilance. Every darkened alley, every empty lot, every familiar streetlight became a measure of awareness. Children, now adults, recounted stories of that night, connecting past and present, their narratives woven into a communal memory that refused to remain silent. The confession itself became a cultural touchstone, discussed in classrooms, community centers, and homes. Psychologists dissected its implications, journalists analyzed its timing, neighbors debated motives and culpability. All the while, the girl's presence lingered. 17 years old, her life and potential abruptly halted. She existed in memory as fully as she had in life. Her smile, her laughter, her interactions with friends, and the very ordinariness of her being amplified the horror of loss, making every detail of the confession more potent, more haunting. Investigators began tracing the suspect's movements in even finer detail. Every corner he turned, every street he traveled, every person he encountered became part of the narrative. Maps were drawn, timelines constructed, patterns established. The meticulousness of the original crime, once hidden in plain sight, now emerged fully. Community members, who had been neighbors, classmates, or casual acquaintances struggled with the reality of proximity to evil. How could life have proceeded uninterrupted in the shadow of darkness? Yet, through the tension and horror, lessons emerged. People spoke cautiously about awareness, about listening to intuition, about recognizing subtle warning signs. Conversations in coffee shops and classrooms shifted toward safety, vigilance, and empathy, an acknowledgement that life is fragile and perception imperfect. And still, the shadow of uncertainty persisted. The confession, while complete in many aspects, left questions unanswered. The mind of a killer is rarely fully transparent. Motives, impulses, and the depth of compulsion remain partially veiled. Townspeople wrestled with these lingering ambiguities, knowing that even as justice had been served, the psychological residue of that night would linger indefinitely. In local schools, discussions emerged, bridging past and present. Teachers used the case as an opportunity to examine societal responsibility, adolescent vulnerability, and the ripple effects of violence. Children and teenagers were guided to understand that the past shapes awareness, but does not define destiny. The media continued its narrative, chronicling each facet of aftermath, each reflection from a community forced into prolonged confrontation with trauma. Documentaries were proposed, articles written, interviews conducted, all chronicling a sequence of horror, revelation, and emotional reckoning that spanned decades. And yet, the town itself, despite renewed attention and scrutiny, held a quiet resilience. Neighborhoods organized watch programs, social support networks strengthened, conversations in homes became more reflective and cautious. While the wound left by that fateful night could never fully heal, the community found cohesion in acknowledgement, vigilance, and shared memory. The girl's life, brief yet luminous, continued to shape consciousness. Monuments were proposed, annual remembrances planned, efforts to preserve the memory of a life interrupted. Every echo of laughter, every recollection of ordinary days now carried dual significance: celebration of life and recognition of its fragility. In the end, the cold case, once a silent shadow, became an active catalyst transforming Amarillo. The confession, shocking in its emergence, rippled through years, forcing confrontation, reflection, and acknowledgement. Streets, buildings, and lives were forever altered, touched by events that proved darkness can linger unseen, that evil can walk in ordinary guise, and that truth, even after decades, can emerge with force enough to shock, to haunt, and to compel action, reflection, and remembrance. Even as the trial faded into memory, Amarillo remained a town divided between the past and the present. Streets held a weight, the pavement etched with shadows of memory. Every footstep, every turn of the head, carried the residue of fear long buried, now freshly uncovered. The convenience store where the body had been found became a symbol, a locus of memory that refused to fade. Passers-by slowed, peering at the windows, at the door, at the alley behind it, imagining the horrors that had unfolded there, imagining the presence of someone who had walked among them unnoticed. Families, who had once clutched each other in private grief, now shared their experiences publicly, each story a thread woven into the collective consciousness of the town. Parents recounted fears they had long suppressed. Children who had grown into adulthood carried fragments of fear, anxiety, and loss. Psychologists noted the persistent trauma, describing a community that had survived a prolonged confrontation with unseen evil. The confession had provided answers, but not closure, understanding, but not relief. Investigators revisited evidence again, poring over materials that had once seemed mundane. Fibers, fingerprints, witness statements that had been overlooked, subtle discrepancies that now revealed patterns. Every minute detail became a key to understanding the mechanics of the crime, the psychology of the perpetrator, the missed opportunities that had prolonged uncertainty. The suspect's life was dissected, analyzed in excruciating detail. Friends, acquaintances, even strangers who had interacted with him decades ago were called upon to recount memories, some fleeting, some vivid. Each recollection, when combined with forensic analysis, painted a fuller picture of a man whose ordinary exterior masked a capacity for calculated violence. Townspeople grappled with disbelief. How could someone so ordinary harbor darkness for so long? The public hearings, community discussions, and media coverage amplified the tension. Headlines continued to scream. 25-year cold case confession rocks Texas. Town confronts shadows of past. Justice delayed. Memory shattered. Each story carried echoes of horror and resilience, blending shock with reflection. The girl's family sought solace in remembrance, creating rituals to honor her memory, small acts of commemoration that allowed them to express grief, to confront the trauma, and to reclaim some sense of control over a narrative that had once left them powerless. Meanwhile, investigators pursued lingering questions. What had prompted the delayed confession? What had gone unnoticed for decades? What subtle cues, behavioral patterns, or environmental factors had enabled a man to navigate the community undetected? Forensic specialists returned to the original evidence, employing technology and analytical methods unavailable in 1995, uncovering details that reshaped understanding of the crime. Each revelation deepened the mixture of horror and fascination. Experts offered insights into criminal psychology, profiling, and behavioral patterns. The suspect's admissions were dissected, revealing motivations, impulses, and strategies for concealment that had gone undetected for decades. The confession was a prism through which the community viewed itself, examining its assumptions, its blind spots, its vulnerabilities. Ordinary routines, once taken for granted, now carried heightened awareness. Empty streets, quiet alleys, moments of silence in familiar spaces, all imbued with latent threat. Residents spoke of subtle reminders, footsteps behind them in deserted corridors, shadows at dusk, the echo of a laugh that belonged to someone long gone. The cold case had awakened collective vigilance. Neighborhood watch programs were reinvigorated, safety initiatives launched, and conversations in homes shifted to preparedness and attentiveness. Yet, despite vigilance, fear lingered, woven into the fabric of daily life. Memory, once dormant, had been activated, compelling reflection on what had been. Overlooked, dismissed, or rationalized. The media chronicled each development, capturing human reactions, emotional toll, and societal implications. Local news stations broadcast interviews with psychologists, law enforcement officials, neighbors, and family members. National media framed the story as a cautionary tale, emphasizing the persistence of evil, the resilience of victims' families, and the capacity of justice to surface even after decades. Simultaneously, social networks became arenas for collective remembrance. Individuals shared stories, photos, reflections, and emotions, connecting threads of shared trauma, grief, and hope. Each post, each comment, amplified the resonance of the confession, magnifying both horror and catharsis. In classrooms, teachers used the case to discuss morality, decision-making, and societal responsibility. Students, though removed from the immediate events, confronted lessons of vigilance, empathy, and awareness. Discussions bridged past and present, linking historical events to contemporary understanding of community dynamics and human psychology. Yet, amid analysis and reflection, uncertainty remained. Questions lingered. How fully could anyone understand the mind of a killer? How many cues had been overlooked? How many moments of potential intervention had slipped by? These questions fueled debate, reflection, and ongoing investigation as law enforcement and community members sought to prevent similar tragedies. The suspect's life, meticulously reconstructed, revealed patterns of manipulation, concealment, and strategic interaction with neighbors and colleagues. His ordinary routines concealed extraordinary malice, a duality that fascinated and horrified experts and laypeople alike. Memory, trauma, and knowledge intertwined, shaping perceptions of safety, trust, and vulnerability. Families of the victim engaged in acts of remembrance, memorials, anniversaries, and community events honoring her life. Each act carried both grief and resilience, preserving memory while confronting the reality of lost potential. The town, collectively, sought to reclaim normalcy while acknowledging that life would forever bear the imprint of a single night in 1995. The confession, while shocking, allowed for reflection, learning, and, in some ways, healing. Streets once feared were gradually reintegrated into daily routines, with residents moving carefully, aware of past dangers yet unwilling to live perpetually in fear. And yet, shadows persisted. The convenience store, the alley, the empty lots remained symbols of vulnerability, reminders that darkness can exist unobserved. Awareness, vigilance, and reflection became enduring facets of community consciousness, shaping behavior, dialogue, and culture. In this landscape, the girl's memory endured, luminous yet tragic, reminding all who encountered it of innocence interrupted, life curtailed, and the enduring presence of consequence, choice, and morality. The cold case, reopened, resolved through confession, became more than a story of crime and justice. It became a narrative of human resilience, reflection, and the interplay of memory, trauma, and understanding. Amarillo would never be the same, yet it persisted, moving forward, carrying the weight of history, the lessons of vigilance, and the echoes of a 17-year-old girl whose life, though brief, reshaped a community, a town, and the very perception of safety, awareness, and human connection. The days after the trial blurred together, yet every moment was saturated with tension. Amarillo, a town that had once carried the weight of ordinary life, now breathed with the pulse of collective trauma. Streets were familiar yet haunted. Corners once overlooked now seemed imbued with latent menace. Citizens walked with eyes sharper, heads turning reflexively, memories of that night flickering behind every glance. The convenience store remained a focal point, a silent witness to horror, its walls echoing the past even as fluorescent lights flickered overhead, humming with a mechanical detachment that contrasted the human terror etched into memory. Families of the victim clung to fragments of ritual, seeking control over a past that had once denied them power. Candlelight vigils, small gatherings, moments of silence, these acts, simple yet profound, served as both remembrance and reclamation. Friends of the girl, now adults, who had once been teenagers, shared recollections with therapists, journalists, and each other, bridging decades with words that balanced grief and resilience. The confession continued to reverberate through the town, its details seared into consciousness. Investigators re-examined evidence yet again, not from necessity, but from a compulsion to understand. Every fiber, every fingerprint, every fragment of testimony was revisited, not merely as proof of guilt, but as a roadmap to comprehend how a life so ordinary could mask malevolence so extraordinary. Psychologists offered commentary on the dynamics of delayed confession, on the intersection of guilt, compulsion, and opportunity. Townspeople listened, absorbing both terror and insight, recognizing that evil does not always announce itself, and that human perception is inherently fallible. Media coverage intensified. Headlines proliferated, capturing shock, revelation, and reflection. Cold case reopened after 25 years shakes Texas town. Confession unravels decades of silence. The killer among us, Amarillo confronts its past. Social media amplified these narratives, with former classmates, neighbors, and relatives sharing memories and speculations, intertwining personal recollection with collective trauma. In schools, educators seized the moment to discuss morality, awareness, and the impact of violence on community. Lessons extended beyond history and sociology, touching psychology, ethics, and civic responsibility. Students engaged in discussions that bridged the temporal gap between the events of 1995 and the present, understanding that the echoes of tragedy can ripple across generations. Investigators continued mapping the suspect's life, meticulously reconstructing daily routines, interactions, and patterns. Ordinary movements, once invisible, now revealed strategy, forethought, and concealment. Friends and colleagues provided insight into behavior that had once seemed mundane, oddities in timing, deviations from routine, expressions that now hinted at internal conflict. These revelations compounded the sense of horror, demonstrating that malice can persist undetected in plain sight. Families of the victim navigated grief renewed. The confession offered specificity that reshaped mourning, shifting abstract anxiety into a tangible confrontation with reality. Therapy sessions, support groups, and communal dialogue became lifelines, allowing processing of trauma and acknowledgement of long-delayed truth. Journalists returned repeatedly, chronicling the aftermath with precision and sensitivity. Interviews with law enforcement, psychologists, and townspeople highlighted the multifaceted impact of the confession. Justice delayed but delivered, grief reframed, memory preserved, and lessons learned. Meanwhile, Amarillo itself seemed to shift subtly. Streets were patrolled more vigilantly. Community programs emphasized safety and awareness. Neighbors engaged in conversations about observation and intuition, turning small acts of attentiveness into collective resilience. Yet, underlying vigilance was an enduring unease. Every empty lot, every alleyway, every flicker of movement in dust shadow carried latent threat. Life, while resuming semblance of normalcy, had been forever altered. The girl's presence persisted as an invisible but palpable force. Memories of her laughter, her dreams, and her life truncated shaped conversations, behavior, and collective consciousness. Monuments, plaques, and memorials were proposed, serving both as commemoration and as a public acknowledgement of the consequences of neglect, oversight, and vulnerability. The cold case, once dormant, now served as a living reminder. Time does not erase evil, it only delays recognition. Communities, once passive observers of daily life, became participants in the preservation of vigilance, the cultivation of empathy, and the confrontation of latent dangers. Discussions in homes, classrooms, and public forums reflected a society wrestling with the duality of human nature, ordinary exteriors concealing extraordinary darkness. The suspect's life, dissected and displayed in painstaking detail, became a lens through which Amarillo examined itself. Each interaction, each routine, each hidden impulse contributed to a broader understanding of how evil can coexist with familiarity, how morality can be concealed, and how accountability, even after decades, remains essential. As days turned to weeks, reflections deepened. Conversations moved from shock to contemplation. What signs were missed? What instincts ignored? How can communities cultivate awareness without succumbing to paranoia? How can memory be harnessed to prevent repetition of tragedy? In this ongoing reflection, Amarillo began to reshape its identity, acknowledging the past while building frameworks for safety, empathy, and resilience. The confession, shocking in emergence, had catalyzed not only legal resolution but also social reckoning, an unspooling of decades-long silence into dialogue, action, and awareness. The town had been forced to confront shadows in every corner, alleys, streets, homes, and hearts. Through this process, understanding emerged that vigilance, empathy, and community engagement are defenses against the persistence of hidden malice. The convenience store, the alleys, and the streets became landmarks of collective memory, sites of reflection and education, reminders that life's fragility demands attentiveness, and that ordinary appearances can mask profound danger. Families, friends, and neighbors carried these lessons forward, shaping practices, conversations, and cultural awareness. The 17-year-old girl's memory, luminous and tragic, continued to influence behavior, morality, and community engagement. Her life, though brief, became a touchstone for understanding, vigilance, and the consequences of actions deferred or unnoticed. The cold case, reopened and resolved through confession, extended beyond courtroom judgment. It permeated consciousness, informed daily life, and reshaped Amarillo's collective psyche. Shadows of the past persisted, but so too did the awareness that truth, even delayed, can emerge with transformative power, reshaping not only legal outcomes, but the very fabric of community, memory, and human understanding. Each citizen, consciously or unconsciously, now carried fragments of that night, reflections on choice and consequence, and a vigilant respect for the fragility and preciousness of life, forever altered by the shocking revelation of hidden evil walking among them. As weeks turned into months, Amarillo's streets remained alive with whispers and recollections. Life attempted normalcy, yet every corner, every shadow carried memory's weight. People crossed streets cautiously, glancing at alleyways that had once been familiar, now tinged with latent menace. The convenience store, site of the original horror, became an unspoken landmark of tragedy. Windows reflected more than sunlight. They reflected uncertainty, vigilance, and a lingering sense of danger. Families of the victim engaged in a quiet, determined ritual of remembrance. Birthdays and anniversaries became moments to honor the life that had been abruptly extinguished. Candlelight flickered in living rooms, in quiet parks, in spaces once indifferent to grief, marking the passage of time and the persistence of memory. Friends of the girl recounted experiences with therapists, journalists, and community gatherings. Their narratives were meticulous, blending grief with insight, detail with reflection, bridging decades with stories that transformed private sorrow into collective consciousness. The confession continued to reverberate through the town. Investigators, compelled to understand fully, revisited every piece of evidence, meticulously reconstructing timelines, movements, and interactions. Every fiber, every fingerprint, every overlooked testimony was now integral to the narrative, revealing how a life so ordinary could mask malevolence so extraordinary. Psychologists provided analysis of delayed confession, exploring guilt, compulsion, and opportunity. Townspeople absorbed these insights, recognizing the duality of human nature, the potential for both ordinary existence and extraordinary darkness within the same individual. Media coverage intensified, reflecting shock, revelation, and reflection. Headlines proliferated. Cold case reopened after 25 years shocks Amarillo. Confession alters community memory, lessons in vigilance and trust. Social networks became archives of collective trauma and insight, as former classmates, neighbors, and relatives shared experiences, bridging past and present. Schools leveraged the case as a framework for discussion. Students engaged in dialogue on morality, community responsibility, and the psychological underpinnings of violence. Teachers drew connections between historical events and contemporary life, emphasizing vigilance, empathy, and the societal importance of attention to detail. Investigators meticulously reconstructed the suspect's life, examining routines, interactions, and behavioral patterns. Ordinary actions, once invisible, now revealed careful planning, strategy, and concealment. Friends and acquaintances provided context. Subtle deviations from routine, expressions unnoticed in the past, behaviors retrospectively imbued with significance. The revelation deepened the sense of horror, highlighting how malevolence can persist unnoticed, concealed in the fabric of ordinary life. Families navigated renewed grief alongside the tentative relief of accountability. Therapy, support groups, and communal engagement facilitated processing of trauma, acknowledgement of truth, and the construction of personal and collective resilience. Journalists returned to document aftermath, capturing emotional landscapes, societal reflections, and ongoing consequences. Interviews with law enforcement, psychologists, and townspeople highlighted the multifaceted impact of the confession: justice delayed, grief re-examined, memory preserved, and lessons internalized. Amarillo itself shifted subtly. Streets, once passive spaces, now operated under a collective consciousness of vigilance and caution. Community programs reinforced awareness, safety, and observation. Residents engaged in dialogue regarding subtle signs, cultivating empathy and preparedness. Yet, a persistent unease lingered. Shadows in alleyways, streets at dusk, subtle movements in peripheral vision, these became reminders of vulnerability. Life resumed, but under the weight of knowledge and remembrance. The girl's presence remained tangible, her memory luminous against the backdrop of tragedy. Her laughter, aspirations, and interactions with friends resonated within community consciousness, juxtaposed with the horror of the crime, amplifying grief and shaping collective understanding. Monuments and memorials were proposed, not only to honor the life lost but to educate, instill vigilance, and commemorate the endurance of human resilience. The cold case, once dormant, now served as a symbol of societal reflection. Time had delayed, but not prevented, reckoning. Communities, once unconcerned observers, became active participants in maintaining safety, awareness, and collective memory. Discussions in homes, schools, and public forums reflected societal confrontation with moral duality, the coexistence of ordinary appearances and extraordinary malice. The suspect's life, reconstructed meticulously, illuminated hidden impulses, strategic concealment, and manipulation, offering a lens through which Amarillo examined assumptions, trust, and vulnerability. Memories, trauma, and knowledge intertwined, reshaping perceptions of safety and community responsibility. Families, friends, and neighbors preserved the girl's memory through annual rituals, personal reflection, and public acknowledgement. Her life became a prism through which community resilience, vigilance, and moral awareness were cultivated. The cold case, reopened and resolved, extended beyond legal resolution. It permeated consciousness, informed daily life, and reshaped collective psyche. Shadows persisted, yet clarity emerged. Truth, even delayed, carries transformative power, reshaping not only justice, but societal behavior, reflection, and memory. Each citizen, consciously or unconsciously, now bore fragments of that night, reminders of choice, consequence, and vigilance. Amarillo had been irrevocably altered, the shocking confession a catalyst for reflection, resilience, and a persistent engagement with the fragility of life, the presence of unseen danger, and the enduring necessity of awareness. Time stretched and folded over itself in Amarillo, each day layered with memory, reflection, and a vigilance that had once been foreign. The town moved through routines, yet every action was measured, every glance deliberate. Streets, once mundane, carried an awareness now sharpened by decades of absence, loss, and revelation. The convenience store remained a landmark of fear and remembrance, a symbol of a single night whose echoes refused to dissipate. Families continued to navigate the precarious balance between grief and resilience. Candlelight vigils persisted, small ceremonies evolved, and private remembrance became public acknowledgement. Friends and neighbors shared recollections with psychologists, reporters, and one another, stitching fragments of memory into a collective tapestry that bore both pain and insight. Investigators pursued lingering threads with painstaking precision. Evidence long considered insignificant was re-examined. Fibers, minute DNA traces, slight inconsistencies in witness testimony. Each piece, once overlooked, now contributed to a comprehensive narrative of the suspect's life and the events of that night. Psychologists and behavioral analysts continued their work, dissecting delayed confession, motivation, compulsion, and concealment. Insights filtered into public consciousness, shaping discussions on morality, vigilance, and the complexities of human behavior. Media coverage maintained intensity, amplifying both revelation and reflection. Headlines proclaimed shock, accountability, and caution. Cold case confession rekindles town awareness. 25 years later, Amarillo confronts its shadows, justice delivered, memory preserved. Social networks became forums for dialogue, remembrance, and emotional processing as citizens, former classmates, and neighbors connected past trauma with present reflection. Schools leveraged the case as an educational framework. Students engaged in discourse about morality, ethics, community responsibility, and the psychological mechanisms behind criminal behavior. Lessons bridged temporal distance, linking historical events to contemporary awareness and vigilance. Investigators meticulously reconstructed the suspect's daily patterns, interactions, and psychological profile. Ordinary routines once unnoticed revealed strategic concealment, adaptability, and manipulation. Friends and acquaintances provided retrospective insight, highlighting behaviors previously dismissed, gestures, timing, expressions, deviations from routine. The community grappled with horror, fascination, and a deep awareness of latent danger in familiar spaces. Families processed renewed grief alongside the relief of legal accountability. Therapy, support groups, and communal dialogue became essential for reconciling decades-long trauma with closure. Journalists documented aftermath, capturing emotional, societal, and psychological dimensions. Law enforcement provided analysis of investigative evolution, detailing how evidence, technology, and human intuition intersected over decades to achieve resolution. The town itself subtly transformed. Streets became spaces of measured observation. Community programs emphasized vigilance, communication, and empathy. Conversations evolved, prioritizing awareness without surrendering to paranoia. Awareness, however, was never complete. Shadows in alleyways, subtle movements in dim light, whispers of memory persisted as reminders of vulnerability and mortality. The girl's presence remained a guiding force in consciousness. Her laughter, personality, and aspirations provided a vivid contrast to the violence that had ended her life, reinforcing the emotional gravity of reflection, memorialization, and societal responsibility. Monuments, memorials, and public commemorations were enacted, both honoring her life and preserving lessons of vigilance, empathy, and accountability. The cold case, once dormant, became an enduring societal touchstone. It demonstrated that time does not erase malevolence, only delays recognition. Communities became active participants in preservation of safety, memory, and moral awareness. Discussions in homes, classrooms, and public forums highlighted human duality, ordinary appearances masking extraordinary malice, and the necessity of vigilance, critical observation, and communal responsibility. The suspect's life, meticulously reconstructed, illuminated behavioral patterns, psychological drivers, and concealed impulses, offering insights into both his actions and the broader implications for societal awareness. Memory, trauma, and consciousness intertwined, reshaping perceptions of safety, trust, and moral responsibility. Families, friends, and neighbors honored the girl's memory through ritual, reflection, and education. Her life, though brief, became a prism for understanding vigilance, morality, and the consequences of inaction. The reopened cold case extended beyond courtroom resolution. It permeated consciousness, reshaped behavior, and influenced community norms. Shadows of past trauma persisted, yet clarity, understanding, and reflection emerged. Truth, even when delayed, exerted transformative power, reshaping justice, collective memory, and societal engagement. Citizens carried fragments of that night, reminders of consequence, choice, and vigilance. Amarillo, forever changed, endured. The shocking confession became both a catalyst and a warning, reshaping the town's identity, consciousness, and understanding of the fragility of life, the persistence of hidden danger, and the necessity of awareness, empathy, and resilience in the face of lingering shadows. Time in Amarillo had transformed from linear progression into an echo, each day resonating with the past, reverberating with memories, and stretching the weight of a single night across decades. Streets, buildings, and homes carried an invisible tension, a vigilance born not of paranoia, but of remembrance. The convenience store, once mundane, remained a silent sentinel, its walls reflecting decades of fear, grief, and observation. Families of the victim continued private and communal rituals, combining remembrance with resilience. Candlelight vigils, small acts of personal reflection, and public commemorations bridged the personal grief with collective consciousness, giving form to memory and ritual to mourning. Friends and neighbors recounted experiences to psychologists, journalists, and one another, constructing a shared narrative that balanced grief with insight, reflection with understanding, and trauma with adaptation. Investigators persisted, reviewing details long considered insignificant. Fibers, trace DNA, discrepancies in witness testimony, subtle behaviors once overlooked, all were analyzed meticulously, contributing to a complete reconstruction of events. Each element revealed patterns of concealment, patience, and calculated action. Behavioral psychologists provided insights into delayed confession, analyzing compulsion, guilt, and calculated concealment. Townspeople absorbed these insights, reshaping perception of human behavior, morality, and vigilance. Media coverage amplified shock, revelation, and reflection. Headlines screamed, "Cold Case Confession Rekindles Town Memory." 25 years later, Amarillo faces its shadows, justice served, awareness preserved. Social media platforms hosted collective storytelling. Former classmates, neighbors, and family members shared recollections, weaving private memory into collective consciousness. Schools leveraged the case for educational purposes. Students engaged in discussions on morality, ethics, civic responsibility, and psychological mechanisms behind criminal behavior. Lessons connected historical events to contemporary awareness, emphasizing vigilance, empathy, and recognition of subtle human behavior. Investigators reconstructed the suspect's life in detail, analyzing routines, interactions, and patterns of behavior. Ordinary acts, previously unnoticed, revealed strategic concealment and manipulation. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues provided retrospective insights, highlighting seemingly minor details that, when viewed through the lens of revelation, became meaningful indicators of hidden malice. Families and communities grappled with a complex mixture of grief, relief, and fascination. Therapy and support networks became crucial avenues for processing trauma and understanding long-delayed accountability. Journalists documented each development, capturing the interplay of memory, grief, and societal reflection. Law enforcement emphasized the evolution of investigative methods over decades, demonstrating the interplay between technology, observation, and intuition in resolving cold cases. Amarillo itself shifted subtly. Streets became measured spaces, where ordinary movements carried heightened awareness. Community initiatives emphasized observation, communication, and social cohesion. Yet, despite adaptation, unease persisted. Shadows in alleyways, fleeting movements in peripheral vision, subtle noises, reminders that vigilance is perpetual and necessary. The victim's presence endured in consciousness. Her laughter, personality, and aspirations contrasted sharply with the violence that had ended her life, reinforcing the town's understanding of fragility, loss, and the stakes of human awareness. Monuments and memorials, erected in her honor, became educational tools, tangible reminders of the consequences of oversight and the enduring impact of one life lost. The cold case, once dormant, now served as a lens for societal reflection. It demonstrated that time delays recognition, but cannot prevent truth from surfacing. Communities evolved, participating actively in the preservation of safety, awareness, and moral consciousness. Conversations in homes, schools, and public forums revealed engagement with human duality, ordinary exteriors concealing extraordinary malice, the necessity of observation, and the ethical imperative of vigilance. The suspect's life, meticulously reconstructed, revealed behavioral patterns, concealed impulses, and strategies of manipulation, providing insight into both individual psychology and communal vulnerability. Memory, trauma, and perception intertwined, shaping behavior, social awareness, and collective consciousness. Families, friends, and neighbors preserved the victim's memory through ritual, reflection, and public acknowledgement. Her life, brief yet vivid, became a prism through which vigilance, morality, and the consequences of action or inaction were taught, remembered, and internalized. The reopened cold case transcended legal resolution, influencing community behavior, perception, and social norms. Shadows persisted, but clarity and understanding emerged. Truth, even delayed, wielded transformative power, reshaping justice, memory, and communal engagement. Every citizen carried fragments of that night, reminders of consequence, choice, and the need for awareness. Amarillo, forever altered, endured. The shocking confession catalyzed reflection, resilience, and persistent vigilance. The town's identity, consciousness, and perception of safety were indelibly shaped by the interplay of memory, trauma, and revelation. Life continued, shadowed yet informed, forever bound to the lessons of a single night, a single crime, and the shocking truths that emerged decades later. Amarillo moved through days that felt simultaneously ordinary and surreal, each sunrise casting long shadows that seemed to echo the past. The streets, sidewalks, and alleyways carried an invisible memory, a quiet tension rooted in the events of 1995 and the confession that had surfaced decades later. Residents went about their routines with heightened awareness, heads turned at unfamiliar sounds, eyes lingered on strangers, steps slowed in spaces once traversed without thought. The convenience store remained a silent witness, its neon lights flickering like the heartbeat of the town, illuminating memories that refused to fade. Families of the victim maintained rituals of remembrance, both private and communal. Candlelight vigils, quiet reflections, and small gatherings merged grief with resilience, creating a tapestry of acknowledgement and survival. Friends and neighbors shared recollections with psychologists, journalists, and one another, blending personal memory with communal narrative. Each story, each detail, reinforced the weight of truth, while also illuminating gaps, misunderstandings, and oversights that had prolonged the cold case. Investigators continued to dissect every nuance. Old evidence was re-examined, fibers, trace DNA, minute inconsistencies in witness statements. What had been dismissed decades ago was now central, revealing the meticulous nature of concealment, planning, and calculation. Behavioral psychologists provided deeper insights into the suspect's delayed confession, analyzing the interplay of guilt, compulsion, and strategic restraint. Townspeople absorbed these analyses, reshaping perception of morality, human behavior, and vigilance. Media coverage remained intense, emphasizing shock, revelation, and reflection. Headlines screamed, "Cold case confession shakes Amarillo's core. 25 years later, justice emerges. Community confronts darkness hidden in plain sight." Social media amplified these narratives, linking personal memory to collective trauma, as former classmates, neighbors, and relatives engaged in dialogue and reflection. Schools integrated the case into curriculum, fostering discussions on ethics, morality, community responsibility, and psychological mechanisms behind crime. Students analyzed human behavior, societal dynamics, and the consequences of overlooked warning signs. Investigators meticulously reconstructed the suspect's life. Ordinary routines, once mundane, revealed subtle patterns of concealment, strategic interactions, and behavioral manipulation. Acquaintances provided retrospective insight, highlighting previously unnoticed behaviors, gestures, and deviations from normalcy, all reframed by the knowledge of the confession. Families and communities navigated grief renewed by specificity, tempered by the relief of accountability. Therapy sessions, support networks, and communal dialogues facilitated understanding and resilience, providing outlets for processing decades-long trauma. Journalists documented the aftermath, capturing emotional, societal, and psychological dimensions. Law enforcement highlighted investigative evolution, demonstrating the integration of technology, forensic methodology, and human observation over decades to achieve resolution. Amarillo's identity subtly shifted. Streets and public spaces became arenas of cautious awareness. Community programs emphasized vigilance, communication, and social cohesion. Yet unease persisted. Shadows, peripheral movements, faint noises served as reminders of vulnerability, the fragility of safety, and the persistence of latent danger. The victim's presence remained central in consciousness. Her personality, laughter, and aspirations contrasted with the violent act that ended her life, reinforcing the emotional gravity of memory, reflection, and communal responsibility. Monuments and memorials, erected in her honor, served as educational and emotional touchstones, teaching lessons of vigilance, empathy, and accountability. The cold case, once dormant, became a lens for societal reflection, demonstrating that delayed recognition cannot prevent the emergence of truth. Communities engaged actively in preservation of safety, awareness, and moral consciousness. Conversations in homes, classrooms, and forums revealed engagement with human duality. Ordinary exteriors can conceal extraordinary malice, vigilance is essential, and ethical responsibility remains paramount. The suspect's life, meticulously reconstructed, revealed patterns, impulses, and strategic concealment, providing insight into both individual pathology and communal vulnerability. Memory, trauma, and perception intertwined, shaping behavior, social awareness, and community norms. Families, friends, and neighbors honored the victim through ritual, reflection, and public acknowledgement. Her life, brief yet vivid, became a prism through which vigilance, morality, and consequences were internalized and remembered. The reopened cold case extended beyond legal resolution, influencing behavior, perception, and social dynamics. Shadows persisted, yet clarity, awareness, and reflection emerged. Truth, even delayed, wielded transformative power, reshaping justice, memory, and collective engagement. Every citizen bore fragments of that night, reminders of consequence, choice, and vigilance. Amarillo, forever altered, endured. The shocking confession catalyzed reflection, resilience, and persistent vigilance, shaping the town's identity, consciousness, and perception of safety. Life continued, shadowed yet informed, eternally bound to the lessons of a single night, a single crime, and the truths that emerged decades later, carrying the imprint of memory, trauma, and revelation across generations. The past lingered in every footstep, every glance, every whisper of wine through the familiar streets. Shadows of that night stretched beyond legal closure, embedding themselves in cultural memory, individual consciousness, and the very fabric of Amarillo itself. Residents carried the weight of history and the imperative of vigilance, understanding that while time could delay reckoning, it could not erase the consequences, nor the lessons, nor the need for awareness. The girl's life, abruptly ended, became a beacon of reflection, a guide for collective conscience, a reminder of fragility, morality, and the enduring impact of one night that forever altered a community, reshaping memory, behavior, and perception in ways that would echo indefinitely. Amarillo awoke each day under the shadow of its own memory, the ordinary world laced with the extraordinary weight of revelation. Streets hummed with quiet vigilance, every step measured, every glance sharpened. The convenience store stood, as both monument and reminder, its fluorescent light casting reflections that seemed to shimmer with past terror. Families clung to ritual, blending grief with the fragile resilience of continuity. Candlelight vigils flickered through windows and quiet parks, symbolic pulses of remembrance, each flame a tether to a life interrupted, a story unresolved until the confession emerged. Friends and neighbors recounted their experiences to psychologists, journalists, and each other, weaving fragments of memory into a collective consciousness, creating a narrative that balanced grief, insight, and reflection. Investigators continued their meticulous work, re-examining evidence previously dismissed, trace fibers, minute DNA, inconsistencies in recollections, and subtle behavioral cues. Each fragment painted a more complete picture of the suspect's life, exposing the extraordinary craft of concealment, the patience, the calculated steps taken to remain unseen. Psychologists offered analysis on delayed confession, exploring the intersections of guilt, compulsion, and calculated restraint. Townspeople absorbed insights, reframing their understanding of morality, human behavior, and the necessity of vigilance. Media coverage remained intense, broadcasting shock, revelation, and reflection. Headlines screamed, 25-year cold case, confession shatters Amarillo calm, town confronts hidden darkness, justice emerges, memories persist. Social media amplified these narratives, linking personal memory with collective consciousness, allowing former classmates, neighbors, and relatives to share stories and process grief communally. Schools used the case as a vehicle for education. Students debated morality, ethics, and civic responsibility, dissected human behavior, and explored the consequences of overlooked signs. Lessons bridged history and contemporary awareness, emphasizing vigilance, empathy, and the subtle signals of potential danger. Investigators reconstructed the suspect's life in painstaking detail. Ordinary actions, once unnoticed, now revealed a strategy of concealment, manipulation, and deception. Friends and neighbors offered retrospective insight, highlighting gestures, routines, and interactions that, in retrospect, had been indicators of hidden intent. Families and the community wrestled with the duality of grief and relief, processing renewed sorrow alongside the satisfaction of accountability. Therapy sessions and communal dialogue provided outlets for understanding, reflection, and resilience, transforming private trauma into shared recovery. Journalists documented each development, capturing the emotional, societal, and psychological impact. Law enforcement shared insight into decades of investigation, demonstrating the interplay of technology, intuition, and human observation in cold case resolution. Amarillo subtly transformed. Streets became consciously observed spaces. Community programs emphasized communication, vigilance, and cohesion. Unease persisted. Shadows in alleyways, fleeting peripheral movement, faint noises, constant reminders of latent danger, and the necessity of attentiveness. The victim's presence remained central to consciousness. Her life, laughter, and aspirations contrasted with the violence that ended her existence, reinforcing the need for memory, reflection, and communal responsibility. Monuments and memorials, constructed in her honor, served as both educational tools and markers of emotional significance, preserving lessons of vigilance, empathy, and accountability. The cold case, once dormant, became a prism through which society examined itself. Time delayed recognition, but truth emerged inexorably, shaping awareness and communal vigilance. Conversations in homes, classrooms, and public forums highlighted the duality of ordinary exteriors concealing extraordinary malice, emphasizing the moral imperative of attention, observation, and ethical responsibility. The suspect's life, meticulously reconstructed, revealed concealed impulses, calculated behavior, and patterns of manipulation, offering insight into individual psychology and community vulnerability. Memory, trauma, and awareness intertwined, reshaping behavior, perception, and community norms. Families, friends, and neighbors preserved the victim's memory through ritual, reflection, and public acknowledgement. Her life became a prism for vigilance, morality, and understanding consequences. The reopened cold case transcended legal resolution, influencing community behavior, perception, and social engagement. Shadows persisted, yet clarity, understanding, and reflection emerged. Truth, even delayed, held transformative power, reshaping justice, memory, and collective action. Every citizen bore fragments of that night, reminders of consequence, choice, and vigilance. Amarillo, irrevocably changed, endured. The confession catalyzed reflection, resilience, and persistent awareness. The town's consciousness, identity, and perception of safety were forever altered. Life continued, shadowed yet informed, inseparable from the lessons of a single night, a single crime, and the shocking revelations that emerged decades later. The past lingered in every movement, every glance, every whisper of wind through familiar streets. Shadows of that night stretched beyond legal closure, embedding themselves in cultural memory, individual consciousness, and the very essence of Amarillo. Residents carried the weight of history and the imperative of vigilance, understanding that while time could delay reckoning, it could not erase consequences, lessons, or the need for awareness. The girl's life, abruptly ended, illuminated human fragility, morality, and the enduring impact of one night that forever reshaped a community, ensuring that memory, vigilance, and reflection would echo for generations to come. Amarillo breathed differently now, a town suspended between the ordinary and the shadow of revelation. Each street, alleyway, and familiar corner carried echoes of the past, vibrations of a single night that had shattered innocence and reshaped memory. The convenience store, the site of horror, stood as both monument and silent witness, its flickering neon lights reflecting decades of grief, vigilance, and the persistence of memory. Families of the victim engaged in acts of remembrance that transcended simple mourning. Candlelight vigils flickered like pulses of life, rituals small yet profound, binding sorrow to resilience, grief to reflection, and personal memory to communal consciousness. Friends, neighbors, and acquaintances recounted details, fragment by fragment, with psychologists, journalists, and each other, weaving a collective tapestry that balanced pain with insight, fear with understanding. Investigators continued to dissect the minutiae of the suspect's life and the events of that night. Fibers, DNA traces, subtle discrepancies in statements, all were scrutinized under the lens of modern technology and decades of accumulated understanding. Each element illuminated the deliberate, calculated nature of concealment, the strategic patience of a life lived outwardly ordinary yet inwardly dangerous. Behavioral analysis offered insights into the delayed confession, the compulsion to reveal, the intersecting motivations of guilt, fear, and opportunity. Townspeople absorbed these revelations, reconsidering the nature of morality, the hidden depths of human behavior, and the fragility of perceived safety. Media coverage persisted, broadcasting shock, revelation, and reflection. Headlines screamed, "Cold Case Confession Shatters Amarillo's Memory. 25 years of silence broken. Town confronts the darkness within its midst." Social media became a forum for shared memory and collective processing, where personal recollection intertwined with communal grief and reflection. Schools integrated the case into curriculum, fostering dialogue on morality, ethics, psychology, and societal responsibility. Students examined human behavior, historical negligence, and the consequences of inaction, bridging temporal distance to cultivate understanding and awareness. Investigators reconstructed the suspect's life with painstaking precision, revealing ordinary routines imbued with concealed strategy, manipulation, and deception. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues offered insight into gestures, habits, and interactions that, in retrospect, had hinted at the concealed malevolence. Families and the community grappled with the duality of grief and the relief of resolution, processing sorrow alongside accountability. Therapy, support networks, and communal dialogue facilitated reconciliation, transforming decades-long trauma into shared resilience. Journalists documented the aftermath, capturing emotional, societal, and psychological impact. Law enforcement shared the narrative of investigative evolution. Technology, observation, intuition, and persistence converged to illuminate a truth long hidden. Amarillo itself had transformed. Streets, parks, and homes operated under a heightened awareness. Community programs emphasized vigilance, communication, and empathy. Yet unease persisted. Shadows in alleyways, subtle movements in dim light, faint echoes, all served as reminders that vigilance must be perpetual, that ordinary spaces can conceal extraordinary danger. The victim's presence endured in collective consciousness. Her life, laughter, and aspirations contrasted with the violence that had taken her, reinforcing the gravity of memory, reflection, and societal responsibility. Monuments and memorials became educational and emotional touchstones, preserving lessons of vigilance, empathy, and accountability for generations. The cold case, once dormant, became a prism through which society examined itself. Time may have delayed recognition, but truth emerged, reshaping awareness, community engagement, and moral understanding. Conversations across homes, classrooms, and public spaces emphasize the duality of human nature, ordinary appearances masking extraordinary malice, vigilance as a moral imperative, and ethical responsibility as inescapable. The suspect's reconstructed life revealed concealed impulses, patterns of manipulation, and calculated strategies, offering insight into both individual pathology and communal vulnerability. Memory, trauma, and perception intertwined, reshaping behavior, social consciousness, and collective norms. Families, friends, and neighbors honored the victim through ritual, reflection, and public acknowledgement. Her life, brief yet vivid, became a prism for understanding vigilance, morality, and the weight of consequences. The reopened cold case transcended legal closure, influencing behavior, perception, and the very fabric of communal life. Shadows persisted, yet clarity, awareness, and reflection emerged. Truth, even delayed, wielded transformative power, reshaping justice, memory, and engagement. Every citizen carried fragments of that night, reminders of choice, consequence, and perpetual vigilance. Amarillo, irrevocably changed, endured. The shocking confession catalyzed reflection, resilience, and an enduring consciousness of human fragility and latent danger. Life continued, shadowed yet informed, forever bound to the lessons of a single night, a single crime, and the shocking revelations that emerged decades later. Memory lingered in every footstep, every glance, every whisper of wind through familiar streets. Shadows of that night stretched beyond legal resolution, embedding themselves in cultural memory, individual consciousness, and the very essence of Amarillo itself. Residents bore the weight of history and the imperative of vigilance, understanding that while time could delay reckoning, it could not erase consequences, lessons, or the necessity of awareness. The girl's life, abruptly ended, illuminated human fragility, morality, and the enduring impact of one night that forever altered a community, ensuring that memory, vigilance, and reflection would echo through generations, haunting yet guiding, a reminder of what was lost, what was learned, and what must never be forgotten. Years after the confession, Amarillo remained a town shaped by memory, a place where time moved but shadows lingered. Streets were no longer just pathways. They were living reminders of vigilance, of a past that refused to fade. The convenience store, long cleaned and repainted, still drew stares, the neon lights glinting like faint echoes of a night that had defined the town's consciousness. Families continued their rituals, subtle yet persistent, blending grief with resilience, remembrance with life, candlelight flickering through windows and silent parks. Friends and neighbors revisited old recollections, stories told and retold, now woven into Amarillo's cultural fabric. Investigators, though decades removed from the active case, consulted occasionally, offering insight into how patterns of behavior, overlooked evidence, and subtle clues had finally converged to expose the truth. Psychologists reflected publicly on the long-term effects of delayed justice, emphasizing that resolution, even decades later, could not erase trauma, but could reshape understanding and awareness. Media continued to reference the case, though the shock had dulled, replaced by reflection, cautionary tales, and the enduring fascination with human psychology and morality. Schools included the story in curricula, teaching vigilance, empathy, ethical responsibility, and the subtle signals of danger, ensuring that generations far removed from the original crime carried forward lessons hard learned. The suspect, long incarcerated, became a symbol in community discourse, a reminder of how ordinary appearances mask extraordinary darkness, and how vigilance, both personal and communal, is necessary to safeguard life. Families of the victim continued to live with grief tempered by a measure of closure, teaching their children about resilience, moral responsibility, and the persistence of memory. The town itself evolved, balancing normalcy with caution. Streets, parks, and public spaces carried an unspoken vigilance, residents aware that the ordinary can conceal danger, and that awareness is both protection and duty. Annual memorials persisted, ensuring that the girl's presence, though tragically brief, remained luminous in collective consciousness. Amarillo had become a place where memory was active, not passive, where the past informed every step, every glance, every conversation. Shadows of that night stretched indefinitely, embedding themselves in culture, behavior, and awareness. Residents carried fragments of history, echoes of grief, and imperatives of vigilance, understanding that time cannot erase consequence, nor memory, nor the need for ethical awareness. The girl's life continued to illuminate morality, fragility, and resilience, shaping the town's identity across decades, teaching that reflection, remembrance, and vigilance are not temporary but permanent, echoing in every corner of Amarillo, haunting yet guiding, a reminder that truth, even delayed, remains a force capable of transforming lives, communities, and consciousness indefinitely. Years after the confession, the echoes of that night continued to live inside the hearts of Amarillo's residents. The parents of the girl walked through their days with a quiet weight, grief intertwined with a fragile, stubborn hope that life, somehow, had meaning beyond the horror. Every corner of their home carried reminders: a photograph, a trinket, a small object the girl had touched, each one a portal to memory, each one both balm and torment. Friends of the girl revisited old haunts, the schoolyard swings, the quiet streets where laughter once rang freely, now filled with the silent resonance of absence. They spoke in whispers to each other, fragments of memory pieced together, the ordinary refrained by extraordinary loss. Neighbors, once casual acquaintances, remained bound by the shared history of shock, watching each other, subtly protective, vigilant without overt acknowledgement, a town forever linked by trauma. Investigators who had worked the case decades ago carried the psychological scars of unending pursuit, the tension of unanswered questions, the quiet relief of finally seeing justice, yet the persistent unease that evil had walked unseen for years. The confession, though shocking and revelatory, did not erase doubt, did not soften memory, did not resolve the intangible fractures left in Amarillo's collective psyche. Teachers and schools shared the story not just as history, but as a moral compass, a lesson in vigilance, empathy, and attention to detail, ensuring that generations who had never known the girl learned the gravity of presence, responsibility, and awareness. Social media continued to carry echoes, stories retold, perspectives shared, memories contested, each account a pulse in the living narrative of the town, linking past and present, grief and insight, horror and reflection. The suspect's life, scrutinized and dissected, became a case study in human deception, the ordinary exterior hiding extraordinary darkness. Conversations in cafes, libraries, and homes shifted subtly toward awareness, subtle cues, and instincts long ignored, reshaping community behavior through the invisible hand of memory and caution. Families of the victim navigated grief like walking a tightrope, suspended between sorrow and the delicate relief of closure. Therapy sessions, support groups, and quiet conversations became lifelines, moments where trauma could be unpacked, reflected upon, and partially integrated into the ongoing flow of life. Journalists returned occasionally, chronicling the long-term consequences, how a confession decades late reshaped memory, behavior, and community cohesion. Law enforcement reflected on decades of patience, methodical persistence, and the ethical weight of delayed justice. Amarillo itself had transformed. Streets, schools, homes, parks, ordinary spaces imbued with awareness, infused with the duality of normalcy and vigilance. Shadows persisted, but understanding emerged. Vigilance and reflection are ongoing responsibilities, reminders that human nature is fragile, morality is tested, and safety is never guaranteed. The girl's presence, though absent, remained palpable. Her laughter, her dreams, her interactions formed a constellation of memory in the minds of family, friends, and neighbors. Monuments, plaques, and annual gatherings became vessels for emotion, teaching, and communal remembrance. The cold case, once silent and unresolved, had evolved into a lens through which Amarillo examined itself. The tension between ordinary life and concealed malevolence, the necessity of awareness, and the enduring impact of truth, even when delayed. Memory, trauma, and consciousness intertwined in everyday life, in a glance down a shadowed street, in a parent's caution, in a teacher's lesson, in a student's reflection. Families, friends, and community members carried fragments of that night, reminders of consequence, choice, and the fragility of life. Amarillo endured, altered but alive, shadowed but awake. The confession had catalyzed reflection, resilience, and a pervasive consciousness that would inform behavior, moral choices, and awareness for decades. Life flowed forward, but always with the memory of what had been lost, what had been revealed, and what must never be forgotten. The girl's life, abruptly ended yet enduring in memory, shaped a moral compass for a town, guiding generations, haunting with its intensity, illuminating the depths of human fragility, the capacity for darkness, and the enduring need for vigilance, empathy, and reflection. Shadows of that night stretched endlessly, woven into culture, consciousness, and daily existence, a constant reminder that truth, memory, and awareness are never optional, and that the echoes of a single night can resonate forever, shaping identity, morality, and the very soul of a community. Decades had passed, yet Amarillo remained a town suspended in memory, a community forever tethered to a single night whose echoes shaped every decision, every glance, every unspoken thought. Streets, once ordinary, bore the invisible weight of caution. Alleyways held unspoken reminders. Sidewalks, familiar and worn, carried the subtle tension of awareness, a quiet vigilance ingrained in the very fabric of daily life. Families of the girl, though aged by grief and the inexorable march of time, continued their private rituals of remembrance, small gestures of devotion that bridged past trauma with ongoing survival. A photograph carefully framed, a candle flickering on a windowsill, a favorite toy preserved in silence, all became threads connecting memory, sorrow, and enduring love. Friends and neighbors carried their own invisible burdens, recollections that surfaced unexpectedly, fleeting glimpses of the past intruding upon ordinary moments, whispers of conversations, laughter, or footsteps now forever linked to absence and revelation. Investigators long retired spoke of the case with a weight that never lifted, detailing the meticulous patience required to unravel decades-old secrets, the intricate dance between observation, intuition, and perseverance that ultimately forced truth from shadows. Psychologists reflected on the community-wide trauma, the ripple effect of delayed confession, the long-term consequences of unresolved grief, and the peculiar ways a single act of evil can infiltrate ordinary life, shaping perception, moral understanding, and social cohesion for generations. Media continued to return occasionally, chronicling not only the original events but the ongoing evolution of Amarillo, how memory had become civic responsibility, how vigilance intertwined with empathy, and how ordinary spaces could forever be imbued with extraordinary significance. Schools reinforced the narrative, integrating lessons on morality, human psychology, ethical responsibility, and the consequences of inattention. Students, generations removed from the night itself, learned not only of facts and events but of the intangible lessons of vigilance, observation, and moral choice, absorbing the weight of history into personal consciousness. The suspect's life, dissected and reconstructed, remained a cautionary tale, ordinary routines masking deliberate concealment, small gestures masking intent, familiar faces hiding extraordinary darkness. Conversations in homes, cafes, and public spaces reflected a heightened awareness, a quiet acknowledgement that the world carries both the mundane and the perilous, often inseparably entwined. Families of the victim continued to live with dualities, sorrow and resilience, grief and cautious hope, memory and the fragile pursuit of normalcy. Therapy, community dialogue, and reflection became tools to navigate decades of lingering trauma, offering pathways to understanding without erasing pain. Amarillo itself had become a landscape of vigilance and reflection, a town where ordinary spaces carried extraordinary consciousness. Parks, streets, and schools were suffused with subtle awareness, the invisible imprint of a past that refused to fade. Shadows persisted, but they were observed, noted, understood. The girl's presence endured in subtle ways, her laughter remembered in anecdotes, her aspirations discussed in classrooms, her absence felt in quiet moments. Monuments and memorials became not only vessels of mourning but instruments of education and reflection, tangible reminders of loss, morality, and vigilance. The cold case, reopened and resolved decades later, had evolved into a lens through which Amarillo examined itself continuously. Time had delayed reckoning, but could not prevent reflection, insight, or the enduring impact of truth. Residents bore fragments of that night in every action, every glance, every decision, reminders of consequence, vigilance, and the necessity of moral awareness. The town endured, irrevocably altered yet alive, haunted yet informed. The confession catalyzed reflection, resilience, and persistent consciousness. Life continued, shadowed by memory, illuminated by understanding, shaped by the lessons of tragedy and revelation. The girl's life, abruptly ended, became an eternal prism of morality, human fragility, and ethical responsibility. Shadows stretched beyond resolution, embedding themselves in culture, consciousness, and the rhythm of daily existence. Residents understood that vigilance, reflection, and awareness are enduring obligations, that the echoes of a single night can reverberate across generations, shaping identity, morality, and communal conscience indefinitely. Amarillo carried the weight of history, the lessons of sorrow, and the imperative of remembrance, ensuring that what had been lost, what had been revealed, and what must never be forgotten would persist, haunting and guiding, a constant presence in the life of a town forever transformed by a single, shocking confession. Generations later, Amarillo carried the weight of memory like an unbroken chain, each resident a link between past and present, grief and understanding, trauma and vigilance. Children born long after that fateful night walk streets steeped in stories, their awareness shaped not by direct experience, but by whispers, lessons, and the careful storytelling of parents, teachers, and neighbors. The convenience store, though renovated and repurposed, remained a symbol, a silent witness to the night that had fractured the town's sense of safety, a relic of horror transformed into a vessel of communal memory. Families maintained rituals that became second nature, a flickering candle at dusk, a quiet acknowledgement of absence in conversation, photographs carefully preserved in frames that captured life now impossible to reclaim. Friends of the girl shared memories, laughter, and sorrow with new generations, ensuring that the essence of her life, the vibrancy, the dreams, the human presence, remained alive even as decades passed. Investigators, some retired, continued to consult with colleagues, reflecting on the persistence required to solve a cold case spanning decades. They spoke of patience, intuition, forensic evolution, and the subtle interplay of human behavior that had ultimately led to confession. Psychologists examined not only individual trauma, but the ripple effects across a community, noting how memory, awareness, and vigilance had become collective responsibilities, shaping behavior, communication, and moral development. Schools incorporated these lessons into curricula, teaching morality, human psychology, empathy, and the importance of attentiveness to subtle signals, ensuring that the story and its lessons endured beyond direct memory into cultural consciousness. Social media carried ongoing echoes of the case, recollections shared, reflections debated, and the memory of the girl maintained in a digital collective, reinforcing that absence could still shape presence and tragedy could inform vigilance. The suspect's life remained a subject of study and caution, ordinary routines masking extraordinary malice, gestures concealing intent, familiar faces hiding darkness. Families, neighbors, and the broader community internalized these lessons, fostering awareness, subtle vigilance, and cautious empathy in daily life. Therapy and community dialogue persisted, a quiet testament to resilience and reflection, as residents balanced grief with living, memory with movement, sorrow with understanding. Streets, parks, and public spaces remained imbued with awareness, the invisible imprint of history shaping perception, interaction, and consciousness. Shadows persisted, yet were recognized, contextualized, and integrated into a cautious normalcy. The girl's presence remained central, her life, laughter, and potential serving as a moral compass, a constant point of reflection and remembrance. Monuments and memorials became enduring guides for generations, tangible vessels for grief, vigilance, and ethical responsibility. The cold case, once silent, had become a framework for community introspection, demonstrating that delayed truth does not diminish its power, and that memory can be an instrument of moral and social education. Residents carried fragments of that night in every glance, every decision, every choice, a silent awareness that vigilance, reflection, and moral responsibility are perpetual obligations. Amarillo endured, transformed yet alive, haunted yet informed. Life moved forward, shadowed by history, illuminated by understanding, shaped by the enduring lessons of tragedy, revelation, and human fragility. The girl's life, abruptly ended but vividly remembered, became a prism through which morality, awareness, and vigilance were refracted into community consciousness. Shadows stretched across generations, embedding themselves in culture, thought, and social practice, reminding residents that truth, memory, and awareness are eternal, that the consequences of a single night resonate indefinitely, shaping identity, morality, and communal conscience for all who walk Amarillo's streets. And so the town persisted, carrying the weight of loss, the power of revelation, and the imperative of remembrance, ensuring that the girl's life, the night that changed everything, and the lessons learned would haunt and guide, echoing through generations, a relentless pulse of vigilance, memory, and reflection, forever shaping the soul of Amarillo.